I'm going to call the October 20th, 2020 Wolfeboro Planning Board meeting to order. My name is Kathy Barnard. I'm the chairman, and I need to read the required script before we proceed. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. However, the Planning Board has jointly decided to proceed with a hybrid meeting format, allowing for members of the public and board to attend and participate in the meeting in person or virtually. In accordance with RSA 91-A:23, the board has one member joining the meeting remotely, which a public body has the authorization to allow. Votes taken during this meeting will be via roll call for all members. In accordance with Emergency Order 12, for members of the public, this is to confirm that we are, number one, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means through GoToMeeting. All members of the public and board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the GoToMeeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-646-749-3122, followed by the audio access code 918-242-429, or by video following the directions on the Town of Wolfeboro website posted on the home page under the virtual town meeting login information page. 2, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting in person or using GoToMeeting. Instructions are provided on the Town of Wolfeboro website at wolfeboronh.us on the virtual town meeting login information page. 3, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or computer, please immediately call 603-941-4947 or email itassistant@wolfeboronh.us. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Okay, I'm now going to call the attendance. Roll call. Mike Cotter.
Present.
John Thurston.
Here.
Susan Replier.
Here.
Julie Jacobs.
Here.
Peter Goodwin.
Here.
Is he up there? Peter Goodwin.
Here. Here.
He's waving.
You can't hear me.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that information. Okay, Peter Goodwin is present, and Kathy Barnard, I'm present. Okay, Von Dugan is not here, so Julie, if you would please sit in if we for discussion and any vote on any issues. And Brad Harriman is not able to be with us this evening. Okay, the first item is public comment, and I don't see any member of the public to comment to us, so we'll go on to the next item, and that's other business and discussion items. And the first items are proposed zoning amendments. Okay, so we have several proposed zoning ordinance amendments, and we think if we can get through some of them that we want to continue to be on the town warrant, that we could then have a public hearing on December 1st. So
December 1st.
That was the date that we were thinking of, but of course I didn't look closely at my own agenda here, and before we continue with the zoning ordinances, I just wanted to announce to everyone that the town manager advised me that Tavis Austin has been hired to replace Matt Sullivan as the town planner, and Tavis has been with the town of Stratham. And Mike and
what's his
I
name, Kathy?
were involved in the
What's his name?
Tavis, Tavis,
And the last name?
Austin, Austin.
Okay.
And so Mike and I have met him, and according to, again, the information I received yesterday, he'll be starting here on October 30th. So we won't have, so he'll be here for the next meeting. I guess good luck with that, since it's a couple days later.
Yes,
Right, so,
we'll just have to be up to speed quickly.
Yeah.
that's right. No, that is not, that's not the case. We decided not to have that first November meeting.
November 17th is the meeting.
And we've had,
Yeah.
the first one will be the 17th, and we do have some public hearings on that evening, and so he should be able to do the plan reviews for us. Okay, so for the proposed zoning ordinances, the first one that we've discussed is to the shorefront residential district. And basically, what we tried to do here was to give people a few more restrictions as to non-conforming redevelopment of shorefront properties. We've changed some of the wording to make it, I don't want to say stricter, I want to say more specific as to what applicants will need to submit in order to get a permit. So we've had a couple of discussions about this. This was brought to our attention. Well, first of all, Matt had some issues with the ordinance, and he felt that it needed to be more specific. And also the Wolfeboro Water Committee, the Prevention Committee is looking at some of our ordinances and felt that this could be made a little more specific, especially as it relates to stormwater and runoff issues. So does anybody have any more issues with this ordinance, or do you feel that this one is ready to go for public hearing?
Madam Chairman, we first looked at this on July 31st, and at that point, there were a number of changes that were required to be made, and the planner made all of those changes and brought it back to us on September the 9th, at which point we had gone through almost all of the changes, and there was only one left to be done, and that was in 175-67A1C, the third paragraph of that subsection, and that was the percent reduction of lot coverage for a project proposing a decrease or no change in the impervious coverage. The number proposed by the planner at the time was 1%. I'm not sure how the rest of the board felt, but I felt that that was a generous allowance, especially for a project which was essentially bringing a lot up to a higher standard than it had been before. And so to encourage the landowner to do that, to bring it up to a more stringent requirement, allow him a 1% lot coverage to make that cut.
Right.
So as far as I was concerned, that was fine, and I have personally no other problems with this ordinance. I'd be happy to move it to public hearing in December.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Agreed.
Okay, is Peter still waving, or is he?
He's here.
Can I see whether I can be heard? Can you hear me?
No, my,
No, well, my mic is on and I logged off and I got back on, so I don't know what the issue is.
his lips are moving. Peter, we can't hear you.
Well, I guess then there's a problem. I will try logging off again and logging back on.
Can Peter hear us?
Can you hear us, Peter? And I was going to try again. That's smart.
Are we rebooting?
Did anyone else have thoughts while we're trying to hear Peter? Or are you folks moving ahead? As I said, I think we've made it a little more specific as to what people have to describe, especially when they're redeveloping properties. And again, those are, and redeveloping the property means basically a tear down and rebuild. So those
Can you hear me now?
permits that Matt said sometimes there were issues with.
Yeah, it's fine with me. This looks more specific, which is good.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Is it tear down the foundation and everything, or is that just the building to the top of the foundation?
I'm not sure how redevelopment was, I mean, it would be basically taking either part of the house down or the whole down, the whole house down to the foundation, I think.
I think either way, John, the wording says a project.
Right.
So that could be everything
Yeah.
involved in that project, whatever project that was. If it had some impact on stormwater management on that lot, it had to meet these requirements.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Let me just give Tim a minute here, see.
Can you hear me now?
Let's see, he could call in, couldn't he?
Yes, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Have him on phone?
Still, I think that the problem is his computer. It looks like it's not sending the audio out.
I probably can. Yes, dear.
No, I was just going to say, because he can hear us.
Doesn't sound like
Agnes said yes, he can hear you.
he can hear.
Can hear us. Okay, then the number, well, he can just call my cell number.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Peter, if you call my cell number, 707-0696, I can put you on speaker. Sorry, folks.
No worries.
Repeat.
This is what our days are like now.
Mine.
no.
Not yours, yes.
Okay, good.
There's a reason to use a shovel, right? Are we getting any hand signals from him, or?
We're going to do it dialing your phone and just like that.
I know that it seems to be on this end.
Oh,
You need the area code.
no, I don't think so.
Well,
Give him your number again, Kathy. I don't think he heard you.
give him the number, okay.
Kathy, just call him.
She doesn't know his number.
I don't know.
Why wouldn't you need the area?
I do. I'm sorry. You're correct.
Call my cell number, 707-0696. Does he look like he heard that?
What?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just, I've got to do this.
Get
Oh,
rid of all this stuff.
There may not be any communication. We have a quorum
Yeah,
here in the room.
okay.
can you keep that up?
His number, that would be helpful, but,
603
707
Oh,
696.
Oh, we hear you now, Peter.
Stereo.
Now we have two Peters.
okay, Peter?
yes.
Oh, okay, we've got you every place. I guess I'll hang up the phone.
Good idea.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, all right. So we have a
So you can now hear me?
yes, we can, loud and clear. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to move the shorefront residential district zoning regulation amendments to a public hearing on December 1st, 2020. I'll do a roll call vote. Susan Replier,
Yes.
Mike Hodder,
Yes?
John Thurston,
Yes.
Julie Jacobs,
Yes.
Peter Goodwin,
Yes.
and Kathy Barnard. I'll vote in favor.
Excellent.
Okay, very good.
Cooking with
Excellent.
gas.
Good to have you with us, Peter.
Well, I have been with you. It's just I couldn't talk, I guess.
Okay, the next item are the voluntary design guidelines. And we reviewed these, and basically all this is removing the references to architectural design standards from the zoning ordinance, because we have removed them, and we've also changed the name. So that's all this is, and it goes through several different zoning districts. That's why there are several pages here.
I'll move to public hearing.
Okay. Somebody want to second that motion?
Seconded.
Okay, all right. Okay, any questions on this one? This is pretty straightforward. Okay, another roll call. Susan Replier,
Yes.
Mike Hodder,
Yes?
John Thurston,
Yes.
Julie Jacobs,
Yes.
Peter Goodwin,
Yes.
and Kathy Barnard. I vote yes. Okay, so this one will have a public hearing on December 1st. Okay, the next one is non-conforming structures, and this basically is just making the wording more specific. This is another one that Matt had some issues with when determining the non-conforming structures, so he proposed this elimination of some wording. Does anybody want to comment on that? Mike, do you want to?
No, I think it's self-explanatory.
Okay. Does anybody have any issues with this one?
No issue.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to move this to public hearing on December 1st, 2020. Did you make the motion, Susan? Oh, okay,
Oh, so moved.
okay. Thanks, Mike. Okay, someone want to second the motion?
Seconded?
Okay, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. I'll do a roll call vote. Susan Replier,
Yes.
Mike Cotter,
Yes.
John Thurston,
Yes.
Julie Jacobs,
Yes.
Peter Goodwin,
Yes.
and Kathy Barnard. I vote yes. So this one will be a public hearing on December 1st. The next one is Habitable Space. This one, we talked to Matt about several times, and so we have that wording, and then when the new codes officer came aboard, he suggested additional wording that would be in the definition of accessory building. And it really just spells out what the issue is. Accessory buildings or structures shall be limited to a single half bath located on the ground floor. And that's what the issue about habitable space on the second floor is all about. That in a garage with a second floor, or a garage with just one floor, you can have a bathroom and it's not considered habitable space as long as it's on the first floor and is just a half bath. So any questions about this issue?
Move to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded to move this one to public hearing on December 1st. A roll call vote. Susan Replier,
Yes.
Mike Cotter,
Yes.
John Thurston,
Yes.
Julie Jacobs,
Yes.
Peter Goodwin,
Yes.
okay, and Kathy Barnard. I vote in favor. The next one is off-street parking and loading requirements, and Mike and I had worked with Matt on changes to this ordinance, and we think we're ready to move ahead, but since we're going to have a new planner on board, we felt that maybe we should have him take a look at it, make sure that that things made sense to him. You,
Bear with me, Madam Chairman.
okay, all right. And we could still move this ahead on the 2021 warrant, but just give him a little time to look at it and see if
Yeah, I
it
would,
makes sense to him.
I would suggest if it's a proper procedure to move this to public hearing 12/1, and then discuss it with the new planner during the month of November. There is one issue remaining which hadn't been resolved before Matt's departure. It may be nothing. It's beyond my comprehension. If he finds no problem, we have it tabled for the December 1st public hearing. If he does find a problem, we can simply either reschedule it for a subsequent date or visit it again next year and put it on public hearing at the end of next year if there's some substantial changes necessary. But I noticed on the fourth page of this proposed language, which, if I can give you a proper notation, it would be the old 175, 138, paragraph F, subsections 1 and 2. The last time we discussed this as a board on the 21st of July, Matt flagged some concerns there, which I do not have in my notes having been resolved. And I
okay.
don't know what those concerns were, and I think I'd like to have the planner look at them
Okay,
to make sure that there aren't any. It might just be an artifact of my note-taking, but if it's not, he should look at them. If it is just an accident and I didn't make proper notes and there is no issue, then it's scheduled for December 1st public hearing. We don't lose any time.
okay, we don't have to move all of these tonight. I'm just thinking of what's going to be on his plate when he walks through the door.
Well, he's the new planner.
Okay,
We're the planning board, and we're moving things onto his plate, and that's kind of the way I see it.
okay,
This way,
all right,
my thought is if we move it to December 1st public hearing, and there is no issue, we're all set to go.
okay,
And if he finds an issue, we can always postpone it subsequently, rather than having to go back and have another vote to move it to public hearing.
okay, all right. Okay, do the rest of you have any issues with moving ahead with the changes to the off-street parking ordinance? I mean, do you think we're ready to move ahead to public hearing?
Based on the previous comments, I would move that this be put on the December 1st hearing.
Okay,
Seconded?
okay. Peter, was that a motion? Was that a motion?
I thought,
That was a motion.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, motion has been made and Mike seconded it. Any other comments? Okay, I'll go ahead with the roll call vote. Susan Replier,
Yes.
Mike Cotter,
yes,
John Thurston,
Yes.
Julie Jacobs,
Yes.
Peter Goodwin,
Yes.
and Kathy Barnard. I vote in favor. Okay, all right, well, we got through those items, so now we're going to go on to the discussion items. The first discussion item is very short. It's the impact fees, and a consultant has been hired to look at the impact fee ordinance. The contract has been signed, and so he's hard at work. This ordinance will be, the basic discussion is going to take place in 2021. I just wanted to update you because we've talked about it, that's where we are with the impact fees. Okay, any questions about that one? Okay, the next item is the lighting committee. We put an ad in the paper to see if there are any members of the public who would be interested in being on the lighting committee. And we had one member of the public that's indicated an interest, and that's Paul Whalen. He's been on the CIP committee, and I don't know, was he on a master plan committee?
Yeah.
yes, he was.
Yeah, okay. All right, so he's the only member of the public that has indicated an interest. The Board of Selectmen appointed their representative, and that's going to be Brad Harriman, and then John and Susan had indicated an interest. So it seems that since Paul has indicated an interest, if people don't have any objections, we should go ahead and vote him as a member of the committee. And then this is a committee that I really think we need to wait until January to get started. I know that the planner has been hired to be a planner, but this is a new committee and is going to take some preparation to get going, so.
There is considerable political interest in this committee and this project, so I wouldn't be.
That certainly wasn't indicated by, it was a large ad,
I said political interest, I didn't say public.
Okay,
I think that the planner and the committee are going to find themselves pressed sooner than January to be doing something about this, but I'd be happy to nominate Paul Whalen as the public member of the lighting committee.
okay, well, maybe you could enlighten us as to some of the issues.
Well, we're all aware of the issues that the lighting committee is going to have to face, and that is whether or not certain illuminated advertisements visible downtown in some establishments should be, could be, can be regulated by current ordinances, or should there be further ordinances to control the amount of light outflow from them and the general appearance that they lend to the town, which some find not to be in keeping with the traditional character of a northern New England little lakeside village. That's as far, I guess, as I need to go.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, the first thing the lighting committee really needs to do is look at what's already in our ordinance. And we've got a section in the ordinance and then in the site plan regulations, so.
May I make a suggestion also that they take a look at the sign ordinance as well? Because I think some of it's going to bleed back into that.
Yeah, right. Right. The sign ordinance also has some aspects that deal with lighting. That's true. Okay, so you made a motion to appoint Paul Whalen.
So I did.
Okay, somebody want to second the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. I'll do a roll call vote to appoint Paul Whalen as the citizen member to the lighting committee. Susan Replier?
Yes.
Mike Cotter?
Yes.
John Thurston?
Yes.
Julie Jacobs?
Yes.
Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
And Kathy Barnard, I vote yes. Okay, I'll get an email off to Paul and tell him that we will be in touch with him. Okay, the next item, the water quality chapter in the master plan. Peter, do you want to speak to this issue? We had talked about developing a water resources chapter for the master plan. Actually, it was a recommendation in the future land use master plan that we just adopted. And you and I had some discussions about the development of this chapter, but then more recently passed on some thoughts that you had about this issue. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. And the issue ends up being that there was the recommendation that we have a new chapter. At the same time, I went through the master plan and copied and pasted all the recommendations, which were from the natural resources section and the future land use section and a couple other sections. And then also realizing that there are presently 3 committees of the town working on water quality. And I believe that the present master plan has enough detail in it to basically cover the, a quote, water quality chapter. And I don't believe that there's any need to add more to it. And I think that it's redundant and may end up therefore being something which dilutes what we're doing already.
Okay.
Agreed.
And also the Wolfeboro Waters Committee is really addressing many of these issues. And by having that committee existing, they'll be coming to us, the planning board, to make possibly ordinance changes, and they've already asked us to take a look at the stormwater management regulations, so I tend to agree that this chapter really isn't needed. I mean, you're thinking that really the natural resources chapter pretty much covers all of this, right, Peter?
There were a few things which were not covered by us, but they were included in other parts of the master plan.
Yeah.
So do we need to table this or just pass it over?
Well, no, I don't. I mean, that's up to you folks, however you want to proceed.
I'm wondering, does it give us any tools that we can help craft a petition, a application in the evening time when we see things and we want them to comply a little bit better? Do we have any tools that are available to us with these recommendations? That's what we come back to, because without tools, we can't say anything because we can't ask them to do anything.
Right, and by tools, you mean the regulations or ordinances?
Yes.
Right, well, that, and, you know, I think that throughout the plan are suggestions of things that we should strengthen, and I think that it's going to be a priority, and it should be.
Yeah, and more too, as we use our natural resources more and more.
Right.
I think that the suggestions are only suggestions. The tools are ordinances. If we find the suggestions to be really worthwhile and something to protect the lake in the future, we should think about turning the suggestions in the master plan natural resources chapter into tools, turn them into ordinances in some fashion. I think that's the process to follow. We can't hold people to suggestions or master plan suggestions because they're not ordinances, but we can turn those suggestions into ordinances if the public wants them for further protections of the lake.
Right, and one of the first ones that I really think we should look at are the stormwater management regulations. Matt really pretty much said that he felt them unworkable. And I mean, we thought we were really doing something positive when we adopted them, remember? And so if they're not workable, then, I mean, that's a pretty basic thing that I think we have got to deal with and work on.
I think that goes partly to interpretation, because as I've sat here for 9 years on this board, I can recall what Rob had set up for stormwater implementation and what Matt was able to set up for stormwater implementation. And I found stark differences in each other's viewpoint and how they allowed applicants to craft their plan for the stormwater management. And I think over the last few years, no discredit to Matt, I do believe that Rob set us up with better plans and more beneficial stormwater management applications. And I think we should try to go back in that direction a little bit more.
Okay, and sir.
Okay, can I talk about this a little bit? I'm looking at the document, which is the master plan. And in the land use chapter, they talk about continuing support of milfoil control, protect the surface drinking water resources, testing program for septic systems in the shorefront residential district, a checklist for reviewing conversion of seasonal structures to year-round dwellings, investigate public and private sewer infrastructure extension projects in sensitive wetland watershed areas, innovative or develop innovative alternative technology, SDS systems, or individual sewage disposal systems in stormwater runoff. It's talking about protecting headwater areas or areas of streams that originated in adjacent communities, as in this might be something which has come from Brookfield or wherever. And it just goes on and on in the that area, and they're recommending regulations. In the natural resources, we're talking about keeping water clean, continue looking at salt use on roads, and it turns out that the combination of these two sections of the master plan, which is in existence, I think support basically everything which could ever be put into it. Now, it may end up being that there could be written an addendum which puts all these ideas together. But other than that, I don't think there's anything that really could be done to improve it.
Okay.
And I'll actually
interpretation.
Yeah, yes, okay, all right.
I think Peter outlined it great, and I think Mike said the same thing as far as you take those suggestions and you work those into ordinances, and if the ordinances that we have aren't getting us what we want for results, then we have to work on those ordinances, and you've suggested the stormwater ordinance, and I think that's a great place for us to revisit.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so, I mean, the thought was, or the recommendation in the master plan is to develop a chapter. And so, again, Mike, do you think we should have a vote on this?
Well, the master plan...
We've considered the recommendation in this recommendation.
Yeah, the master plan is not dispositive. We are not required to follow a recommendation in the master plan.
Right.
But I think our discussion tonight shows that we have, in good conscience, gone through the points raised in the master plan. Peter has enumerated them.
Yes.
And we are aware of its recommendations, when we also are aware of the fact that in order to turn them into ordinances, we have to sit down and sharpen our pencils and get busy.
Right.
And I think everybody on this board feels that we need to do more to protect the lake, which after all is the basic economic engine that makes us all able to live here, work here, and, you know, continue raising families and living here.
And our job is to consider the recommendations in the master plan, so we're considering it.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
our discussion here tonight has shown that.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm going to make one minor change to what Mike ended up saying, is that we have more than one lake in the town of Wolfeboro. So we need to protect Lake Wentworth, Crescent Lake, West Pond, and
I'm sure I said lakes, but if I didn't, I'm sorry. I would not want to scorn Wentworth.
But thanks for pointing that
Yeah,
out to us,
but
Peter.
thank you for the correction.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing from folks is that, yes, we all agree it's a priority, and we're going to be dealing with these issues, and we have considered the recommendation and don't feel as if it's necessary at this point. Would that be accurate?
Yes, but we'd like to hear from those committees that are...
Yeah, oh, yes, well, yes, exactly. Right, and that's...
I would suggest that I would be very happy to forward the document which I put together of the pieces of the existing master plan to the members of the board, so that you can see what has been put together.
Okay, that would be great. And we're going to get to that master plan in just a moment here. Okay, so we have considered this issue, and we feel as if we're dealing with it.
Agreed.
Okay, all right, let me see, the next item, yes, the mean natural grade, the height definition. We had a discussion about that, I think it was at the last meeting.
September the 1st.
Meeting before, when,
Vaughn was here.
yeah, Vaughn had a different view of the height definition than Matt did. And I think Vaughn was the author of the height definition. I was hoping she'd be here, but I'm not sure that we really need to change that. I think that's kind of a major thing.
I agree. My notes from that last meeting, September 1st, indicate that we, after watching Vaughn and Matt go at it regarding the definition of mean natural grade, showed that Vaughn's view, which was the existing language, prevailed, and that we agreed. I'm not sure we took a vote, but at least in my notes, indicates that we tabled any further discussion of mean natural grade changing in the definition, because the one that exists now is perfectly fine.
Right, right.
And that Matt's was a complication. Matt's was actually based upon suggestions from Jim Rhines, and we were going to get further feedback from Mr. Rhines. That never seems to have arrived. So I would move that we just simply table this and retain the original language.
Okay. If that's a motion, somebody want to second that motion?
It was, and thank you.
I'll second that.
Oh, okay, thank you. I mean, basically, we can table this indefinitely. I don't believe that I've heard too many discussions about about people having issues with using the height definition, and it's been in place for quite a number of years. And Vaughn deals with it every day in her professional life, so.
So we'll have to wait till the planner comes and we'll see what his interpretation is.
Right, right.
Maybe have a different idea.
Okay, so the motion is to table this indefinitely, and roll call vote. Susan Replier?
Yes.
Mike Hodder?
Yes.
John Thurston?
Yes.
Julie Jacobs?
Yes.
Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
And Kathy Barnard. I vote in favor of tabling this indefinitely. Okay, the next issue. Peter, this one is on the agenda as view issues, but it really relates to the emails that you had sent. I've got a date of September 14th on it. It was lumbering and viewscapes. Do you want to talk to us about this?
Yes, I would like to do that, as in the Natural Resources Committee of the Master Plan ended up putting these two issues into the recommendations from the Master Plan. Perhaps it would be useful to have an ordinance which talked about prohibiting such and such from occurring. Especially with viewscapes, however, that is a very difficult situation. And Newfound Lake, which is an interesting lake on the west side, it ends up having a reasonably fast rising ridge, which is very close to the lake, and on the east side, similar. On the north side, there's also rising land, and it was possible for them to take various points on the lake shore and figuring out what particular areas were in, quote, the viewscape. With Matt, I ended up saying that I would take a look at some of this. And the real issue that you have is that because Wolfeboro is a relatively flat area, finding points where you could end up figuring out what was, quote, in the viewscape is basically something which is a huge process and very impractical. And so therefore the thinking would be that instead of having an ordinance or having any rules made which are binding, that it would be more, hey, these are the best management practices for the viewscape. As in, if you end up building a house and you put a pink paint on it, that may not be good. And what you might want to consider is putting more earthy tones. And I think that Vaughn talked about that at the last time we talked about this. And so therefore, this would be something where if there was somebody who might be in the view shed, that when they got their building permit or when they're applying for their building permit, they'd get a piece of paper that they'd have to sign, which basically says, yeah, I read about this stuff. I'd like to be a good neighbor, and or else I don't want to be a good neighbor, and I'm going to put up my pink house. And so therefore, this is not anything which is binding. It is just information. The same would also be true with the lumbering piece, and this is the Natural Resources Committee discussed this at some length. And it is also associated with the fact that there are some lumbering groups out there that do horrible jobs. I know of examples of people who have had their land absolutely trashed by one of the foresters, or that came in and just absolutely trashed their land. And that people should be aware of what good management practices are. And so when the permission to cut is applied for, they should also return a piece of paper which says they have read what best management practices are and how to protect yourself from scamming loggers.
Okay. I'm not sure who issues the lumbering. Do you know much about that?
Who issues what?
The forest, so we don't really have any input into that.
No, I respect Peter's interests and I share them, and they're echoed, of course, in the master plan, but I looked carefully to see what sorts of influence the planning board might have, either jurisdictionally or otherwise, into both viewscapes, view sheds, and lumbering practices, and I don't really find any, and that's unfortunate, but that is the case. The state statutes allow the planning board scrutiny of forestry activities only for subdivision applications and site plan reviews. So that would eliminate automatically a private house going up.
Not in general.
Not in general. State statutes also say specifically, and this is a quote, a town can make a bylaw affecting forestry activities as long as it doesn't adversely affect forestry activities. You read that any way you want to, but it basically says forestry is forestry, and that is one of the protected industries in the state. Notices of intent to cut and reports of wood cut, they're issued by the selectmen and received by the selectmen, and the tax is imposed by the assessor, but is paid to Department of Revenue Administration. Planning board doesn't really get involved in that. So as far as forestry is concerned, we could, if the board wanted to, draw up a list of BMPs for forestry practice, and that would be fine, but do we have the authority to tell the Board of Selectmen that you have to get the forester to sign off on having received these in order to get an intent to cut? The law doesn't allow that. There's no reason why he should have to do that. He can do it voluntarily, but he doesn't have to do that. And I think that in case of forestry, the board would be stepping on shaky ground if it tried to impose what might look like a requirement without any sort of statutory authority behind that. So I share Peter's concerns. I've seen clear cutting, which is absolutely atrocious, and I've seen the way some people out there have handled their forests and their trees with no care whatsoever for either the location or the surrounding locations. But I just don't think that it's this board's purview to get involved there with any kind of effect. I think it would be futile. Frustrating. And as far as view sheds are concerned, and viewscapes are concerned, statutes only describe viewscapes per se when it comes to shorefronts. And they're very specific. They have no other definitions of what a viewscape might be. As far as view sheds are concerned, we have a description of view sheds They're in attachment 2 to Chapter 175, but if you look at the view sheds that the town of Wolfeboro has established as being in existence, some of them are absolutely impossible. Cotton Mountain is considered a view shed, the entire thing. Beach Pond Road is considered a view shed, right from the bottom of Pine Hill Road all the way to the top, past the dump. Where is the view shed? If we were to define what a view shed was and where you could or couldn't, first of all, we don't have the authority to tell people what they can or can't paint their houses. This is not a historic district. But if we had recommendations that we were to pass out to commercial developments and site plan in case of subdivisions as to the builders for private homes, saying that you're in a view shed, we would recommend you don't paint your house pink, you paint it a nice brown or a green to blend in with the location, we'd be in the same boat as we're in with forestry, making recommendations for which we have no authority, and taking the chance that the individual will say, I don't need to look at this, you can't tell me I have to, and being left with a kind of a futile operation. Like I said twice before, I share Peter's concerns, but I just don't see this board having the scope to encompass them.
Well, who does have the authority or the scope, and can we recommend it to them?
To define view sheds and viewscapes?
And for the lumbering as well.
Well, lumbering is the state forestry department sets the BMPs for forestry. Our town's, as far as I can tell, only role in the business is to issue an intent to cut, which puts people on notice that there's going to be cutting going on in a particular lot, and then collect the forestry tax fee and further that off to DRA. Everything else regarding forestry is run by the state. As far as viewscapes and view sheds are concerned, as far as I know, there's no easy way of establishing what a viewscape or a view shed might be. If you think about it, if you're on the top of a mountain, what's the view shed? Is it everything you can see?
Well, that's the first struggle, is to...
Mike, can I speak to this? It's one of these things where I am not advocating any regulations. I am not regulating or advocating for anything which is going to tell people what to do. And I agree completely with your statement that is the state who deals with forestry, that the definition of the view shed is very difficult. All I am doing is advocating for a piece of paper which the person signs to indicate that they have read what best management practices are. It has nothing to do whether they have to follow them. It has nothing to do with anything else. All it is to make them aware that there might be issues associated with what they're doing. And I am not in any way saying we have to regulate these people.
But by what authority do we write a document and ask people to sign it? We don't have that authority. We have no authority over forestry, and we have amorphous descriptions of what view sheds and viewscapes are. So what do we have to back up the documentation that we're asking people to sign? And if they're signing it voluntarily, it seems, I wish we had a planner here who could tell us yes, no. But it seems to me like if something like that is going to be asked of developers or guys who are going to cut on their property or somebody else's property, that's something that the selectmen should be doing, not the planning board.
Oh, certainly.
That would be fine, and I would be more than a select board do that as compared to us. I do believe, however, that the view shed issue is something which could be associated with a building permit which is issued. And so therefore, I believe that is within the bounds of what the planning board can deal with. And there is nothing which is telling anybody that they have to follow these regulations, follow the best management practices. All it is doing to make them aware of what these issues are.
Okay, as far as the lumbering, I don't see any downside to talking to the selectmen to see that if they could add something on their intent to cut about BMPs. I mean, that
Agreed.
seems like a positive thing to do.
Agreed.
And
So what happens when somebody signs something and a neighbor comes in because they're upset at some cutting that's going on? Then where does the authority lie after the neighbor comes in and they says, I've got this paper, they sign this?
I'm not thinking of having them sign anything. I'm thinking of giving people information.
Oh, okay.
It also doesn't do anything for like what happened near my house on both sides of me. The guy that did the free cutting came through and basically wiped out everything.
Well, I
It'll
think
never
that,
be better.
I think that before we recommend to the selectmen that a document be drawn up, and whether anyone signs it or not, beside the point, but a document be drawn up regarding BMPs on forestry, that we should look very closely at the state statutes and the state's forestry department to see what they already require of foresters, because we might be just crossing a T that's already been crossed. And if the state requires BMPs for their forest management practices, then we kind of look foolish saying the same thing if the state's already saying it. I think before we go any further, we should, at the very least, look at what the state requires for forestry BMPs, and then we should bring our planner in,
Yeah.
because presumably he will know something about this more than I do, that's for sure.
Well, I would actually suggest that this particular piece of paper would not come from the quote forester, it would come from the landowner. And so the landowner needs to be, sign some document. If I know what best management practices are and I don't follow them, there's no legal recourse that anybody can take just because I didn't follow what was quote best. It may be that it was the best for my particular purpose, but at the same time, at least the person has been made aware of this. In the same way with the Viewscapes, all you're doing is making the person aware of what the best management practices are. You're not requiring them to do anything. And so therefore, the adjacent landowner can't sue you because you put pink paint on your house.
Well, I think that if these two initiatives, forestry and then Viewscape/Viewshed, two initiatives, I would not recommend this board initiate them. I would recommend that these be private initiatives by Peter and any other board member who wants to, signed as individuals and present it to the Board of Selectmen as private initiatives. I don't think this board should vote to make those initiatives part of the board's recommendations. I think we're on shaky ground if we do that.
Okay, well, as far as the view sheds are concerned, there's a model ordinance that was put out by the state. So there is the ability to do something. The planning board has discussed that in the past and decided, I don't know if you remember this or not, John, but because it's been quite a while, but I mean, we certainly can bring that back up for discussion again. Because I know there's a model ordinance, so...
Yeah, we looked at that model ordinance.
Yeah, we did. We looked at it twice.
We did look at it,
Yeah, and we
decided we didn't want to do it.
Because
It's coming up.
It was the same one that we looked at in the library the same year. It was the exact same piece of paper.
Yeah.
And Dave Bowers sat on the board as a fill-in that night for Selectmen. And I remember him saying, we looked at the same paper a month and a half ago, exact same writing.
we passed over it because it was really impossible to define a view shed in any kind of practical fashion. That, as top of a mountain, view shed is everything you can see. Bottom of the mountain is as far as the trees go.
Yeah, view shed could be somebody on the mountain looking at the person who built the house on the island, saying, you just opened that spot up there and you just took all those trees down. I don't like that view anymore.
Yeah. So we have to be careful, because if a view shed, I mean, there are certain parts of the Mississippi River where the view shed can be 10,000 square miles. You know, you can't regulate that sort of thing. So I think that as far as the issues raised here tonight on view sheds, viewscapes, and lumbering are concerned, I personally will not endorse a board recommendation to the selectmen that something be done. I think that's overstepping our bounds.
Okay, well, but I don't see any downside to having a discussion again in a few weeks about these issues when the new planner is on board.
Absolutely not.
And so...
You want me to move this to a discussion subsequent, say in the month of November, November 17?
Well, we don't necessarily need a motion because I have little piles.
Okay, then I'll move to add it to one of your little
This
piles.
little elephant that doesn't forget yet. I may get to the point where I do, but, okay, so I'm going to put this, Peter, is that okay with you? Does that sound like a good plan? We'll discuss this with the new planner and get some other thoughts on it.
Sure. The only thing is that I keep hearing things coming around to ordinances and requirements, and this is not in any way what I am suggesting. So yes, let's put it on the agenda for later. I suggest that probably November 17th is not the time to do it, because there's going to be a lot of other stuff there. So, and this is not
November 17th, trust me, because we've got quite a few other items.
Right. And so, but this is not time sensitive. This is something recommended by the Natural Resources chapter. And, you know, so if it's taken up in January, that's just fine.
Okay, all right. Does that make sense with everybody? We'll have another discussion about it.
Sure.
And you'll hear about the tour that I made of the town with Chris Franson back quite a number of years, where we tried to define viewscapes and view sheds, and it is a challenge. Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks, Peter. Okay, well, Peter, the next issue is yours also, and that's the Moody Mountain height issue.
Right. This particular issue came up because when the easement for the Whiteface Mountain property was granted the Lakes Region Conservation Trust, the person who wrote the article on it went to the master plan and looked at the natural resources inventory and found that Whiteface was the highest mountain in Wolfeboro. And it turns out that's not true by about 150 feet. And so all of a sudden there was a huge amount of pushback on what this thing is, as in, you know, this is stupid, we need to change that. There is some indication that I've gotten from actually a member of the Conservation Commission that talks about the idea that this particular data set was created as a project by seniors from University of New Hampshire. And so who knows how they got their data or how they processed it. However, when you look at the contour maps, and also if you go on Google Earth, you end up finding that the heights of Moody Mountain is much larger than Whiteface. So the question is, how do we end up changing these? I can easily provide a data set for what the altitudes are, with one exception. And the one exception is there was a hill in the natural resources inventory called unknown. And therefore, I don't know where that particular hill is. Other than that, all the altitudes have been can be updated. And then the question is, how do you deal with that? You know, do we hold a public hearing on it? Do we have to get that changed? All we're doing is we're changing the facts of a particular document.
Okay. All right.
Question for Peter?
Didn't Matt write an email?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excuse me?
Didn't Matt write an email about that?
Yes, he did.
Yes. Yes, Matt sent an email to Peter saying the report was composed by FB Environmental, that is a reputable environmental firm, and he was curious about the deviations and also wanted to know about how yours are being measured. And then he said that the best way to handle this would be an addendum to the chapter on behalf of the town.
Can I ask, Peter, what is the source for your real elevations?
The source for the real elevations is USGS topographic maps. They are accurate to within 10 feet in this area. You also can go on Google Earth and find elevations, which is the same data which GPS data works with. If you go on a mountain bike ride with your GPS device, it will tell you how many feet you go up and how many feet you come down, which is therefore based on the elevation at the points on your route. And so therefore this data is available, and so therefore you can end up finding out how high you are at any particular time. So therefore, it turns out that the member of the Conservation Commission, who I believe knows the situation, says that the data was not created by the quote reputable firm. It was created by another group, which was the University of New Hampshire senior project, and they were using GIS stuff.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's the reason why I asked. The existing elevations, incorrect as they may be, are attested to by NRI. If we're going to change them, we need to have an attestation equally as authoritative as NRI. If the USGS maps all show the elevations that you indicate as being real, then that would be the source for the change. Mm-hmm. We just have at the bottom USGS actual readings or something like that. That would then balance off the NRI, and we would not have to explain ourselves as to where the numbers came from. What to do with them, I would recommend that we put them as an addendum to the master plan, vote on that tonight, ask Peter to draft them in some fashion that can be made into an addendum, rather than reopening the master plan, holding a public hearing, which could open an entire number of can of worms, and then go through a vote and a debate. We can handle this as an addendum in-house.
That's
correct.
Agreed.
Well, I don't know if it can be done in-house. It really needs to be done publicly, I think, so people can comment on it.
If we're simply going to add it as an addendum to the end of the master plan, we're not changing the wording of the existing text.
Okay.
We're adding an addendum to the end of the additional text, much as we do with the implementation matrix, which we're working on currently. Mm-hmm. Then I would think we wouldn't need to have a public hearing and invite debate.
Agreed.
We could just get it done in-house.
Okay, well, I think we need to do it properly also, and I want to make sure that we are.
I would suggest that we
I
hold
don't want you to think I'm trying to suggest anything improper, Madam Chairman.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But I'm just trying to save ourselves.
That's the only reason I mean, generally, we have public hearings when we amend or addend a document, and so that was where my suggestion came from. And so
I would suggest that if we hold a public hearing on this particular addendum, it is not going to be an issue. We can hold a public hearing, then we will have dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and then it will be done.
Can we maybe use a different word and call it a correction? Because our facts were incorrect on something?
well, the person
than a
that
change?
did it originally may take an issue with that. So.
Our Madam Chairperson is a stickler for public input, so I guess we're going to be doing a public hearing on this issue.
Well, it seems that that's what our job is.
But we do need,
to inform the public of any changes that we make in any regulations we adopt, so.
We're going to have some form of a document to present to the public.
Well, yes,
Okay.
right, yeah, I really think we need a little more information. I'd really like the opportunity to look into this a little more. I'm not an attorney, or you're not. Just want to make sure that I'm protecting what the planning board as a whole is doing. That's all I'm saying. And,
Not in disagreement.
excuse me?
I'm not in disagreement.
Okay, all right, then could we look into this and find out the proper procedure and then proceed?
You mean the proper procedure to amend a master plan?
The proper procedure for dealing with this issue.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, we should.
okay. Is that okay with everybody, that we
Yes.
come up with the proper procedure for dealing with this?
Yeah, and I just have a question too, as
Sorry to
to
be a little sarcastic, but
where you want to put it. You're saying an addendum at the end of the whole plan? Or should it be an addendum at the end of that particular chapter?
I would think
Just a note
where
for-
it's referenced is where we would addendum this.
You're going
That's
to be,
where I'd like
I
to see
mean,
it.
I know that some of the things that I base my discussions on come from another state, but anytime we changed a document, we made it a public notification so people knew what we were doing, why we were doing it, and the facts. Okay? And that's all I'm saying.
Just
I
need
just
to
want to
occur.
make sure that in New Hampshire would do it properly also.
may I ask a question regarding the proper procedure? If we're going to reopen this issue, are we reopening the entire master plan?
No.
Or just the one chapter?
No, just actually the page,
Just the page?
yeah.
Is that proper?
I
If we're-
don't know, that's why I want to look into it.
Okay,
I'm not an attorney.
okay, I'm just
That's
curious,
why I'm
because if,
wondering maybe it
Okay,
should be
and
called more
I think it would be good
corrections.
to just check with our attorney to make sure we're doing this properly. It may come up again. But then again, maybe the new planner will be able to answer this quite quickly.
good.
Okay? Okay, so thank you, Peter, for this, and we're going to proceed and get the information corrected once that we determine the procedure to do it, okay? Is everybody okay with that?
Fine by me. And I guess I was absolutely amazed at what a hornet's nest the improper assignment of the highest mountain in Wolfeboro was.
Okay, well, we're going to correct it, by gosh. So that's good, I think.
Yes.
Seconded, Peter.
Okay, master plan implementation. At some point, we need to determine how we want to proceed with this. Vaughn is meeting with the Heritage Commission with the implementation plan. Do all of you have a copy of this? Oh, okay. Because I've got plenty of copies for when...
What is it? That's the master plan?
Yeah, this is just the implementation.
Oh.
Okay. Do you have a copy?
I'm not sure. I'll take one just in case.
It's in the master plan, but it's nice to have that
Right.
separate.
Yeah, right. And we all have the copies of, yeah.
Maybe she wants one.
Okay, so I know Vaughn is working with the Heritage Commission. Mike, are you going to be working with EDC?
On the master plan? I hadn't been,
Yes.
I had not been appointed to do that.
Oh, okay, well, it was just sort of a question.
No, it hasn't even come up.
Okay. I know that Matt said, I thought he gave them a copy of this, and that there was a discussion at the Economic Development Committee.
That may have been before I became a member.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, how do you folks want to proceed with the implementation of the master plan? We made quite an issue out of it when we were going through the public hearings, rightfully so, that whatever was developed, we were then going to make sure that the plan, that the planning board would pay attention to it, make sure that the items were dealt with in a timely fashion. We have immediate and not so immediate, and later on. So any thoughts on how you folks want to proceed with implementation of the master plan? Or do you want to wait, have the new planner participate in this discussion?
We need him to participate anyway.
Yes, of course we do. Right, and I'm asking if you want to wait on this discussion until he's present.
Hadn't we asked the chairpersons of each chapter to come up with a list of the priority items and how they should be implemented for his or her chapter?
Okay.
Because I know that John and I, on my behalf, or on his behalf, submitted a list to you of the suggested implementation steps for the community facilities chapter.
Okay.
And we have yours of August 22, and as far as I'm concerned, your list is a good list to be working from.
Okay.
So we're partway there, but maybe each chapter chairperson should get involved in crafting his or her implementation list of the priority items that need to be dealt with, say, 2020, 2021.
Agreed.
Mike, didn't we do that in the master plan itself?
We did.
Isn't that part of what you wrote in the beginning of the
Yeah,
chapter?
what I did, Julie, and I'm pretty sure I sent you a copy. What I did was I took the suggestions from the community facilities chapter and then assigned them to a particular organization that was required to do them, or was recommended to do them.
I don't remember that. I just remember seeing it in the master plan itself.
Yes.
I didn't get anything different afterwards.
And it wasn't different, it was simply divided up in a different fashion. I took the list of whatever it was, 10 or 12 of them, and then put them into different categories. Who was responsible for what? We never assigned responsibility in the recommendations, but here we were assigning responsibility for implementing them. I'm pretty sure I sent that to you. If I did not, then I'll resend it to you. I thought I'd send it to every member of the committee.
Okay, but I mean, we need to be able to follow up with the groups, have something in place as to, okay, so Board of Selectmen, this is your list. I mean, are we then going to be checking back with all of these folks, or how do you want to proceed?
How do you usually proceed?
Well, the way we did it last time is Stacy Pope and I did it.
You did
Did what?
We went through the implementation plan for the planning board, and each year we brought to the planning board's attention the items that needed to be accomplished. But previously, there was an implementation committee. I believe Linda Murray was the chairman of it. And so she basically, I think, dealt with the Board of Selectmen, and Stacy and I sort of tried to keep track of the other groups. But it was an overwhelming task, and I'm just trying to see if there are ways that we could do this better where,
I'm not one to condone new committees, I like to get things done as quickly as possible, and I don't like to waste time with new committees when they're not necessary.
Okay, well, I'm not asking that.
No,
was
but I
just- you
am
just
saying
asked me what was
In this
done.
instance,
Yeah,
I actually think that a committee is merited to follow up on the implementation of the master plan and chip away at the priorities per chapter, like Mike said.
okay.
Should it be maybe put into a sliding graph type thing like the CIP does with other things? You know, is to,
Put into a what?
into a graph type situation, like the CIP has their big,
Yeah, well,
Like a
then,
spreadsheet,
that is sort of what we did last time.
you know, say this one's more important, it goes over here, you know? Just so that they're
Well,
Yeah,
more visible on the map.
that's a fine way to go about it. Yep.
Here's a theoretical, then, if the master plan is a product of the planning board, then perhaps the planning board should go through all of the recommendations made in the master plan's chapters, extract out the ones that have priority for 2021 now, and 2022 maybe, list them, assign them responsible agents, and then periodically, or maybe at the beginning of each year, bring them to the planning board's attention. This is what needs to get done. These are the priorities listed in the master plan. Then we keep it in-house. And maybe go to Susan's suggestion, appoint a subcommittee of a couple people whose job it would be to go through all the master plan recommendations, drag out the ones that are really important that the planning board can address, and go after them. Theoretical suggestion.
okay. Other thoughts?
Not happy ones.
Well, other thoughts would be that the planning board itself go through each chapter with the chairman representative of each chapter, highlight the major focus. We move on to the next chapter, we wrap it up as a group,
Share the job.
share the job, get each person head of each chapter to come in, revisit the most focal areas, and we just work it into one page, and we try to come up with it that way.
Okay,
So you're saying all of us do it together as a group, one at a time, one chapter at a time?
With each chapter's representative highlighting, helping us go through
That's fine too. That's another good suggestion.
Yeah, that would work that way. I think it would add another layer. It would take a little bit more time. But we wouldn't be acting as if we were proprietors of the whole plan. We would be engaging the people who worked on the chapters, and that might be more public, more open, more welcoming.
But also would force each one of us to look at that chapter that we didn't have anything to do with again, and pick through it one more time for the meeting, like, oh, I gotta read that again. You know? Be
Right.
more
And
familiar with it.
Carve out part of each planning board meeting.
well, right,
For that.
That's
yeah,
right.
that's what I
Maybe,
was thinking, that we have a section
Yep.
in each meeting,
Yep. I like that.
and it's defined ahead of time, so,
Right.
And that would be in the work session?
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
right.
and then
It doesn't
down
feel
the-
like such a big job that way if we did it little bits at a time.
And then down the line, in 2 years, we talked about this a couple months ago about, this should be a rolling document. It should be revisited not after 5 or 10 years. It should be revisited a couple of years down the line to see how these things are being implemented and how they're going.
Right. Okay, so
Okay.
basically, the planning board has the majority, planning board and board of selectmen. So how are we going to go about, will we give the Board of Selectmen a list?
We should hit their priorities first.
Right, yeah, well, yeah, and probably need to get to it, so once they're done with the budget, then,
Because again, that's what's gonna make the most sense for them, because they're gonna have to get those items in the budget
right.
if they need to be
Well,
allocations.
If we're going to do that in time for the budget, how are we going to get to have each chapter chairperson come in and,
Yeah, right.
you know,
Well,
we're going to run out of time for this year's budget.
yeah, well, no, it's not gonna
No,
make it
no,
for this
no.
year, because they're in those discussions.
Right, of course. So we're looking at 2021's budget.
Right,
We have plenty of time to follow John's procedure and get responsibilities assigned, quote unquote, assigned to their responsible agent.
okay. What I had asked Matt to do, and he kind of ran out of time, was to just get a computer list that shows, and that's what we had before, was the planning board responsibilities, Board of Selectmen, so that you had a list. And,
What about the consultant? What ended up having the consultant?
I think they can help
they've
much.
gone on to the happy consultants, wherever. But that's probably what needs to be done. Oh, okay, so basically what you're saying, what I think I'm hearing is that we should have a time on each meeting to discuss this.
Yes, definitely.
And be specific about which chapter we want to discuss, so that the chapter person is aware of it. Is that?
And their representatives and their committee members could come and join in also, and they could, support their team. That's what needs to happen.
Tell them in advance what they're supposed to be doing,
Right,
and
what they're
give them
supposed
some kind of a time limit, maybe make it a 20-minute session.
Okay, does anybody want to take on this project? Because I have got to tell you, I
I'll
don't
take it
have
on.
any time.
I'll take it on.
Okay, that would be, I mean, basically what we need to do is go through and determine.
Contact each person in charge of
Yeah.
each chapter.
Right,
Ask them to come in. Shall we start at the top?
yeah.
Do we need to go in order?
No, well, that really.
It's up to Susan,
That's
So
up
I'm
to
just saying,
Sue.
is there,
as long as we get them
or
all
some of
done.
those chapters more important than others at this point?
And you ask each chapter representative to maybe prioritize their top 3 priorities and come in ready to talk about their top 3 priorities and how they're executing them.
Right, okay.
I can totally
All
do
right.
that.
Cool.
Okay, and why don't we, you want to plan on starting that in January? Is it?
Up
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah,
Sure.
Why don't we start it in January?
Yeah, because November, December are going to be kind of tough and full.
Okay,
Good.
all right, that's great. Thank you, Susan.
Sure.
And I can show you what the worksheet that we had last time, because that's what I was thinking. If Matt could have pulled that together, that really made it pretty basic.
Okay.
Okay, all right, anything else, folks? Any other issues? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Motion has been made and seconded.
Seconded.
Seconded. Do a roll call vote. Susan Replier,
Yes.
Mike Hodder,
Yes?
John Thurston,
Yes.
Julie Jacobs,
Yes?
Peter Goodwin,
Yes.
and Kathy Barnard. I vote to adjourn. Thank you very much, folks. Made
Thank you.
some-
Next meeting is